Well, let's return to Brexit now. An MP's failure to agree a way forward last night. Where does it leave us, and what is the prospect of Theresa May getting her deal through? Well, joining us now from Westminster, Robert Oulds, the director of the Bruges Group, a Eurosceptic think tank, and also Jessica Seymour, Queen's Counsel at Matrix Chambers and a Remain supporter. Robert, to you first of all, where are we now? What do you think the most likely scenario now is?
Well, the most likely scenario is that we leave the European Union. MPs have voted for the situation where we are by approving, by 500 votes, the EU Notification of Withdrawal Act and passing the EU Withdrawal Act. We are still on course to leave the European Union, perhaps not tomorrow, 12th of April, Friday the 12th of April, in 2 weeks' time. Because as we've seen, MPs have tried to frustrate the democratic process. They tried to frustrate the referendum.
Sorry to cut across you, but just to be clear, Robert, so you think the most likely scenario is that we will leave on April the 12th with no deal and we will just leave then? You think that's most likely at the moment?
We'd be leaving without Theresa May's withdrawal agreement, in which case other deals kick in. There's no such thing as a cliff edge. But the European Union is increasingly frustrated with the failure of the Parliament to move this process forward. So the alternative is quite clear. We leave either with the withdrawal agreement, but most likely without it. There's still not parliamentary support for Theresa May's deal, so we are still on course to come out. And as we've seen from last night's antics in the House of Commons, no other option has the support of Parliament, least not another referendum, which would not deliver a Remain vote, even if it were to be held, which is highly, highly unlikely, because there's simply not the time nor support in Parliament for another referendum. So we need to move forward. Respect the referendum.
Jessica, what are your thoughts? Do you think that is, I mean, on paper, that is where we are, isn't it? That we are going to leave on April the 12th with no deal at the moment, unless something happens, unless the Prime Minister is able to get a meaningful vote back in front of the House of Parliament, or if she's able to get a long extension from the EU. What do you think is the most likely outcome?
Well, the Prime Minister has committed not to leave on no deal. She said that in Parliament, I believe, at the dispatch box on Monday. And yesterday's vote showed 400 MPs against no deal, surprisingly 160 in favour, but nevertheless a massive majority against no deal. In terms of another vote, there was only a difference of 27, so it only needs 14 MPs to move over in order for there to be another vote. So it seems to me that if the vote does not go through on Friday, if the deal either isn't allowed to be voted on by the Speaker or doesn't go through, then the likelihood, I would have thought, is that in the following week or 12 days up to 12th of April, Parliament will move to decide to have another vote, to give the people the chance to decide again. The question will be what should the people be deciding on, and obviously Parliament will come to some decision in relation to that. But in my view, certainly Remain will be on the ballot.
Robert, you're shaking your head at that, but that is a fair point, isn't it? You know, what you're maintaining is the right solution, leaving without a deal on April the 12th. It was the least popular option of the 8 that were voted for last night. And as Jessica was saying, the possibility of there being another referendum, possibly on what has been agreed, got the most support. I mean, clearly also not enough to get through, but it did get the most support.
Well, that was because it was whipped against Labour Party policy by Jeremy Corbyn, who, of course, we all know is actually a leaver. That's why it got a disproportionate high amount of votes, calling for another referendum. But there were Labour frontbenchers who abstained, so, you know, more people from Labour could have voted for it and they didn't. So it doesn't take an enormous leap to think that those numbers could be brought across. Well, the problem with the second referendum is that it's just an attempt by Remainers to undo the first referendum, undo the election result where 80% of MPs were elected on the manifesto commitment of respecting the referendum, honouring the referendum, taking us out of the European Union. And this is going to be an affront to democracy which won't be tolerated. But the biggest problem is they do not know what the question is. There has not been a majority in Parliament so far. They don't know what the question is. And the mechanics of holding a referendum, it takes around a year to get one through. Are we really going to delay Brexit by a year? It's already been over 1,000 days since the referendum result. People will not tolerate further delays, and neither will the European Union. They want us out. before the European elections. They want us out by the very latest, the 22nd of May. There cannot be extensions beyond that. We run into European elections, new commission being formed. It can't proceed. So there will not be another referendum. It is a false prospectus. There was a people's vote in 2016. Leave one. Let's move forward. It's enough now.
Jessica, an affront to democracy, what you're suggesting?
Well, two points to make. First of all, it's just simply wrong to say it would take a year. The Institute of Government, I believe, has said 3 to 6 months. It could be done in 3 months. And the other point is it's frankly ridiculous and absurd to suggest that a vote by Parliament is disproportionate because Labour whips for a particular position. That position that Labour whipped for is Labour's policy, and they will whip for it again. And that
their policy is to have a general election first. That is not their policy.
Well, it doesn't matter whether it's their policy. The point is that they whipped for it,
and with a free vote on the other side, it still didn't.
That is not a disproportionate result. That is a democratic result, and that is what
and they voted against another referendum. It's not happening. We need to move forward and implement the result of the last one. You can say it's not happening, but ultimately, I'm afraid it's our MPs that decide what's happening, not you. It's the British people who ultimately have had their say in the first referendum. There is no overwhelming support for a second referendum.
No, but there is a majority in favour of another vote. There is a majority in the country in favour of another vote. The polls showed that yesterday.
But that's one poll showing that.
There's other opinion polls which show the alternative position. There are other opinion polls, and there is no clear support in the country for a referendum again, another divisive referendum. What there is support for, and increasing support, is leaving the European Union without Theresa May's deal. That is the biggest, most popular option available. That's what the politicians
that is simply wrong and
deliver.
Not true.
That is according to the opinion polls. There is more support for no, that is not. Leaving the European Union without Theresa May's deal has more support than leaving with.
When you compare Remain and no deal, Remain has a majority.
That is what's been clear in the opinion polls.
We can't hear you if you talk over each other. But let's just get you both to stand up what you're saying. Jessica, just remind us of the poll that you are talking about and what it says.
So the poll that I saw yesterday, which I believe was a Sky poll, was 45% in favour of another vote and 35% against. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, because that's only my recollection, but that was what I believe I saw yesterday evening.
Yeah, and John Curtis has said there's other opinion polls. The leading expert on polling has said there is no clear mandate for another referendum. There's other opinion polls which show the opposite. And John Curtis is the leading expert. We can all talk about and choose our own polls, but let's implement the biggest poll in British political history, the referendum of the 23rd of June 2016. The numbers there outweigh any other poll.
Robert, sorry, I'm just really trying to get to the bottom of where Robert's getting his facts from. Robert, you're saying that your view that there isn't the support is coming from guidance in Parliament. It's not coming from an opinion poll. It's not coming from what? Where is that fact from?
John Curtis has made it quite clear that there isn't actually support, because there are opinion polls which support a second referendum by a small margin, certainly not a majority in the poll your other guest was talking about. There's other polls that show a different position. But the fact remains, MPs will not vote for this. They've been asked on a number of occasions to implement another referendum, and it's been voted down on several occasions now. There's also the time factor. There needs to be consultation. There needs to be official groups recognised to campaign for the propositions in each of the questions of a referendum, which of course isn't decided yet. It would take around a year, and that is quite clear. The last one took a year to be held. They tried to rush it through sooner. The European Union will not delay Brexit any further, nor will the British public tolerate this dragging on much more. It's been over 1,000 days since the referendum, over 2 years since Article 50 was put in. We are just essentially weeks away from a point where we'd have to have European elections. Let's get on and deliver the result and move forward and be optimistic. Let's leave without the withdrawal agreement. Let's save that 39 billion. Let's make our own laws again and move forward. controlling our own country, just as people voted for and just as MPs promised when they were elected in 2017. This is a key issue here. It's about trust in politics, it's about our democracy, and it's about putting our country first.
OK, and on that subject of trust, just to be clear, we don't want to mislead anybody, that was a Sky poll that you were referring to yesterday. We asked yesterday whether those polled would be in favour of a referendum on any deal, and of the results, you were very close. 40% were in favour, 35% were against, the people that we spoke to yesterday, Jessica. Jessica, in terms of the bigger picture of what we're looking at here and what we saw happening with Theresa May yesterday, her offering her resignation, do you think, has she sacrificed herself for nothing?
Yes.
I find it very difficult to engage in the debate about Theresa May. Part of the whole problem with these last 2 years is we've been obsessed, as we are in this country, with individual political personalities, and the big picture and what really matters seems to be forgotten. And indeed, your other guests just now spoke the same evidence-free platitudes we've heard for 2.5 years. And what I hope is that when we come to this crunch point, MPs will look themselves in the mirror and do what is right for the country on the basis of evidence. And of course, we want this all over. In my view, personally, Brexit has failed. And that itself is reason to end it. But I understand the political imperative of returning to the people if Parliament can't reach a solution. What is clear is we can't simply say, to hell with this, we're just going to do it. We have to do the right thing, even if it's painful and even if it takes a long time. And it certainly will not take a year.
OK, we are out of time, so I'm going to leave it there. Jessica Simon QC, Simon Moore and Robert Oulds, thank you very much from the director of the Bruges Group. Thank you both very much for a spirited debate. Now, there are fears that many